Good evening. Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to the happiest show on the internet. My name is Rob Weiner, and for the next hour on this very special episode of Lights, Camera, Musical, the show where we look at famous stage to screen adaptations, we're going to do something just a little bit differently today. See, usually we look at a famous film adaptation of a musical. We've done episodes on movies like Chicago, Mamma Mia, Rent, etc. But today we're looking at some film to stage transitions and then back again, specifically with the films known as the Disney Renaissance that occurred from 1989 to 1999. It's typically known as that, sort of like this new golden era. Well, I guess it's not new anymore because that's 30 years ago. Wow, I'm old. But specifically, we're going to look at the first four, and I think the most famous films in that series. That's The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King. It's going to be a lively discussion about some of the most successful entertainment properties of all time. And hey, we want to hear from you. So if you want to join the conversation, please sure that you have allowed StreamYard, that's the platform we run our programming through. Make sure that StreamYard has you all set to comment along with the show. So please, if you haven't already done so, if this is your first time here joining us, or if you're back or you haven't commented before, please go to streamyard.com/Facebook so you can join the conversation because this discussion is a lot of fun, but it's going to be even more fun with you, our audience, being a part of it. We're going to ask some questions, get some thoughts. We're going to have some hot takes about some of these Disney movies, so we want to hear yours. So we hope you'll join us and to join me to help me even more on this journey under the sea and traverse these waters here. I have brought in a few Disney experts, so let's bring them in. First, she's been an avid performer in our community for over 20 years in shows like Avenue Q as Kate Monster. She was in Ragtime, Footloose, and Farmer's Alley's first season children's show, Blue's Clues Live, in that big blue costume as Blue. She's the mother to the spunky Spitfire known as Kit, and a lover of most, if not all, things Disney. Please welcome Jen Tyson. Jen.
Hey there.
Hey, happy belated birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And if you're not a follower of Jen on social media or Jen and Kit on Instagram, Jen, I know you just traveled down to, is it the most magical place on earth or the happiest place? I never get Disneyland and Disney World confused here.
The happiest place on earth is Disneyland. The most magical place on earth is Disney World.
Okay. And you were down there in Disney World enjoying all the parks. And let our audience know something really cool you did on that last day that you were there.
So we did a 4-park challenge for my birthday, which was a bit of a challenge in that you can't park hop right now until 2:00. So we did all 4 parks in one day. 2 of my best friends, Kelly and Keith, came and visited and hung out with us, and it was super cool. So it was a lot easier to do without Kit. No offense, Kit.
Don't tell her that. But Jen, you are a Disney expert. I love the ears there. How many pairs of ears do you have?
Probably 10 or 15, which might sound like a lot to some people, but it's not as many as some people I know.
Oh, I'm sure some people have hundreds. Well, when we decided we had to do a Disney episode, you were one of the very first people I thought of. So your whole life has led up to this moment. So we're so glad to have you here.
Thanks.
And but next to join Jen, we have a man who can bust out any Disney song, no matter how obscure, in a matter of moments. He's wowed Farmers Alley audiences and audiences across the country as Jerry Lee Lewis in Million Dollar Quartet, and his new musical Fly More Than You Fall is in production right now. I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only Nat Zegree.
Hello, freshly sunburnt Nat Zegree.
There you are.
I'm only realizing now that I look at myself on screen.
Now, Nat, you're a Disney fan, would you say?
I would consider myself a Disney freak for my entire life, and for the remainder of my life, I will remain such.
You know, I meant to ask you this, so let me go back to Jen. Jen, where did your love of Disney come from?
I think it came from exactly what we're talking about tonight. I was like 9 years old when this renaissance really started, third, fourth grade. So it was just like such a time to just really get really into that. So
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was asking that question to myself. It literally was these movies because we're the same age, and it's like these were right in the wheelhouse as we were like going through elementary and middle school and getting our musical tastes and stuff like that. Now, what about you? I mean, I know that music and the Disney music, which is its own huge canon of things, is probably one of the big influences on you as well.
100%, 100%. The Disney catalog and repertoire, musically speaking, is, I think, the most wide-ranging repertoire that you can ever get to, while also somehow being in the same wheelhouse. Like, Disney has a very specific feel to it in many of its films, even dating back to the classic Golden Age and the era. And it was really great for me because I have a totally different perspective, having been born in 1993. I kind of got everything all at once, like I got to watch all the movies. Like, here they are, they're out, they're ready, they're here, and let's go. And so I just did, and it was all we would watch. It really was.
I mean, it is pretty amazing, the transcendency and how timeless that these movies are and have been. I mean, go back to Snow White in '39, but specifically the Disney Renaissance and the staying power of these four properties that we're going to speak of right now.
Yeah.
I mean, these four are pretty much the ultimate when it comes to Disney movie musical magic.
Yeah.
And last but not least, he's like, am I part of the show? I'm like, well, you're not a special guest. You're a regular guest. And that means I want to bring in a man who was already revealed and unburdened himself to the world on Facebook this week by revealing that his very first CD he ever owned was the soundtrack to The Little Mermaid. He's seen Frozen over 20 times thanks to his kids and has too many Disney Legos to count. It's Adam Weiner.
Hello, welcome. Yes, it is true that I remember getting when the CDs were like in those huge boxes. You know what I'm talking about, Jen?
They were long.
The long boxes. And I remember going to whatever the store was in the mall. It wasn't FYE, some other crappy, I don't know.
Record Town.
Yeah, something like that.
What was that? What was that music store that was where John Rollins' books used to be? It was something like B Music. I don't know. Jen, you should know. You're always on those like 1980s, what the store was. Anyway, there was a music store there, but yes.
I love all of these four properties or movies or stories or whatever. And I was thinking about this a little bit. And then, at that time when they were first coming out, I was 11 years old and getting into musical theater for the first time, right? This was like at the height of Phantom, Les Mis, all that stuff, and getting all that stuff kind of influenced from my parents or doing civic youth theater stuff. When Little Mermaid, these was before any sort of musicals were on the screen at all. You basically had Little Shop of Horrors in 1986, and that was it until 1995 when Evita came out. And it really didn't start going, obviously, until Chicago came out. So Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, these four were all we had for musical theater basically on the screen, particularly Beauty and the Beast, which kind of took that same structure and put like basically a stage show on the screen in animated form. So it kind of was doubly special for me that grew up with that in this way, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, now before we get into speaking about these films specifically, Adam's kind of bringing up here sort of like what the Disney Renaissance was. We need to look back at the time right after Walt and Roy Disney died. Walt Disney died in 1966, I believe, and Roy Disney passed in 71. And so from that era, from like 71 to 88, it's a very thin era as far as Disney animated films, and it's extremely thin, especially if it comes to musical properties.
Yeah.
I mean, they had films like The Rescuers, Fox and the Hound, Great Mouse Detective, and then, of course, there was a big exodus of Disney animators who left with Don Bluth. And then in '86, there was this like battle between The Great Mouse Detective and American Tail, and American Tail was the winner of that for sure. Especially when it comes to the music. I think Somewhere Out There won the Grammy for Best Song, and it's like it really was something that was dying, and people were wondering if the Disney animated film and the movie musical were ever going to come back. And I think you're right. Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, coming from Little Shop of Horrors and their musical pedigree, really rose and brought Little Mermaid and then the subsequent films to a whole new level when it comes to movie musicals. So the very first,
brother.
The truth, just fact.
Thank you. Yes, snaps. So the very first film that we're going to talk about right now is The Little Mermaid, and that was released on November 17th, 1989. Just a little bit of history on it. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was one of the big producer for Disney back in the day, he was worried that the film would earn less money because it appealed to females, because apparently women don't go to the movies or go with their families to movies. And he was worried that it was too close to a Splash sequel that they were going to have happening. But little did he know that it would become this smash hit. It won 2 Oscars, and it was Howard Ashman himself who had the idea to take the character of Sebastian. He originally was this like English style butler, and made him into a bigger role, into this Jamaican crab, and revised the story to make it more of this Broadway style story structure.
Yes.
And if you have not seen the documentary Howard, if you have Disney Plus, we mentioned it during the Little Shop of Horrors Lights Camera musical that we did, but Howard Ashman's work in bringing Disney back to like the movie musical, exactly, Chris is exactly right, is the reason for Disney's comeback, for sure. What was your relationship with that movie, Jen? Did you see Little Mermaid like in the theater? Do you remember that?
Yeah, most definitely. And when I think back on that movie, I mean, I wore the tape out. I was crazy about it. It was my favorite thing. I memorized not just the songs, but like all of the dialogue. I probably could recite half of it now still, because it was my whole world. And I remember thinking, like, I really want to do that. I want to become a Disney voice. I want to be a Disney princess someday. Like that really introduced me to like what voice acting was like, because I was just old enough to understand that even though it was a cartoon and it was, it was fake, but there were real people behind that. So
yeah.
And
do you
I
remember
carried it with me throughout my whole life? I mean,
absolutely. Adam, do you remember? I feel like we saw this as a family together in Seattle.
Yes, I was just thinking about that. Where was it? Really?
Yeah, I feel like we visited our cousins in Seattle and we saw The Little Mermaid together.
Did we see Home Alone too at that time? Why did I think it was Home Alone? Did we see them both?
I don't know. Home Alone came out in 1990, I believe.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. Maybe. But yes, I do remember seeing it in the theater.
And of course, I mean, being your first CD soundtrack, I bet you were singing Part of Your World in the shower when you were getting ready for your bar mitzvah.
That's right. Little did I know. I wanted to be Prince Eric. No, I don't know. I didn't really relate to the film that much. I don't know why. I just had it. I got the portable CD player. That was like the big deal, right? To get a portable CD player back then. And I don't know. I played it at night before I went to sleep. I don't know. It was soothing, as Jodie Benson sang me off slumber. I don't know.
Probably more Samuel E. Wright and Kiss the Girl, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I love that part.
Nat, what about your relationship with the movie?
Well, obviously, I came a little bit later into the game, and so I didn't probably see Little Mermaid until the late 90s, like right around when Phantom Menace was probably making its way back into theaters and whatnot. But for me, Little Mermaid was influential for me because it was one of the first things that, like, I remember I definitely saw Little Mermaid first out of all of these films. It was either Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast, but I'm pretty sure it was Little Mermaid because my sister at that point was already a little older than me and a big fan of The Little Mermaid. But even more so, my dad had a really silly connection to it in that he loved the fact that Sebastian was the conductor, the choral conductor. And I even remember, like, he would say things when we were younger, like, you see, anybody can do it, even a crab. And it was great because, like, it did it made it relatable to me in a way that it shouldn't have been, right?
Sebastian was one of your role models.
It's true. Sebastian was one of my role models, but I also loved I loved more than anything the first 10 minutes of the film. The first 10 minutes were so exciting to me. The big shark chase, like for a really long time, that was the movie to me. Before I was really old enough to like focus on the music and the story and whatnot, I was like, let's watch the shark movie. And then after the shark movie, I'd be like, then go do something else and whatnot. But it wasn't until I was a little older when I started to realize that Little Mermaid genuinely had some of the first examples of motif and musical themes in Disney movies that really stuck with the audience and represented its atmosphere. For me, the classic, like when I hear that, it not only reminds me of Little Mermaid, but it makes me think of water.
Yes.
It makes me think of an underwater.
And a color too. It makes me think of that aqua color.
There is an aqua blue color that matches it. And just from hearing that alone, all of a sudden, pun intended, you are part of that world. And it was that when I remember thinking when I was playing piano as a kid and learning different movie themes, that was one of the easiest things that I first like figured out by ear, because of course it's just a very simple melody. But in such a simple melody, there was such a huge effect from it. Not to mention the song hadn't even really begun, and we're just talking about that little motif, and that was enough.
Well, I'm going to ask you all for any hot takes or controversial opinions on The Little Mermaid. But before we get to that, I do want to mention, and think about your favorite part from that movie. And watching it back now, and I've watched all these movies a lot when I was a kid, and now I've gone back and watched them as a parent to children, to my girls, and Adam and Jen are probably doing the same, going back and watching these movies through adult eyes now. But my favorite part of The Little Mermaid now is Ursula. And the animation that they use for her and the way the camera is very sort of adult in its way. And the way that Ursula used her body and almost, can I say, her sexuality in a way to sort of seduce whoever, seducing Ariel to that, and like the way the camera, like her bust goes right into the camera. I mean, that's just an insane choice that they made there. I just want a little
really
info
affected
about
you, huh?
it did. Okay. Sebastian was one thing for Nat, and Ursula was another thing for me. We all know that.
I'd like to clarify. I wasn't paying attention to any part of Sebastian's body.
Okay. But they wrote for her. And they wanted B. Arthur to be Ursula because she was, Disney owned with the Golden Girls, but for some reason she turned it down. And then Elaine Stritch was cast, and she was working on it. And I guess that her and Howard Ashman clashed about a bunch of things, and eventually she left the project.
Oh, she didn't show up.
Maybe
she was late.
Maybe. And then eventually Pat Carroll took over and has been iconically playing that voice in, sequels and video games and stuff like that. Yeah. Some other almost casting that happened. Apparently, they were reading or trying. I don't know how that happened back in the mid '80s, but I read somewhere that Jim Carrey potentially was Prince Eric, and that comedians Bill Maher and Michael Richards, Kramer from Seinfeld, read as Scuttle the seagull.
Wow!
So there's that. Now I'm going to ask each of you, Adam. We'll start with you. Do you have any hot takes about The Little Mermaid?
Hot take? I guess, I love Ariel's one of the first Disney princesses who's number one, she's kind of a screw up, and number two, she defies authority, right? She's the first in the string of strong women, I guess you could say, that kind of does that, because Snow White, Cinderella, they're all kind of oppressed by their stepmothers or the.
What's your hot take?
My hot take is Part of Your World is the best I Want song ever written. I think, the I Want song is usually delivered by the protagonist, 20 minutes into the movie or the show, and it basically tells you what they want. And, how Menken and Ashman basically did it with Somewhere That's Green with Little Shop of Horrors, and they kind of remade it into Part of Your World.
Right.
Man, every note of that song is perfection. It's like one of those that don't change a thing. It's perfect. And I listen to the whole thing every time I hear it. It never gets old for me. So,
all right, so that's your hottest take.
It's the best I Want song ever.
That's a lukewarm tag. That's lukewarm tag.
All right, whatever.
That's just like a fantastic compliment.
Yeah. Jen, any hot takes or controversial opinions on The Little Mermaid?
Sure. I mean, as a young child, I thought Ariel was the sun and the moon and the stars. As an adult and a mom to a 7-year-old, I think Ariel needs to kind of take it down like 10 notches and maybe not fall in love with the first cute guy that she sees on a ship. So yeah, mostly I guess my hot take is I think Ariel is kind of a brat with probably severe OCD.
Yeah, you want more hot take? She's an idiot too. She can't write. Pick up a pen.
Jen, my notes say
ocean. Why would she know how to write?
She knows how to sign the contract.
That's
a good point. That is a good point.
Hey,
that is
Eric,
a good point. I didn't find that.
My name is Ariel.
And perfect too.
Anyway. So Jen, that was my exact hot take. I would show you my notes. They say Ariel is a brat.
Yeah, that's literally what I've written down in my notes. And yes, I have notes.
Nat, anything to add here on the hot takes or controversial opinions?
My hot take is pretty much the same thing that you just said, but I'll even go one step further, which is that it promotes a lesson that I think no girl should ever do. Girls, don't ever silence yourself, for any reason. Don't ever sell your voice. Your voice is the most important thing that you possibly have. And I understand how that is kind of the point a little bit, but it's also like, just don't be willing to do that for anyone, like when I grow up, I was like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Don't do it. My other hot take is the fluke is the Duke of Soul is the best lyric in the whole movie.
Dude, I love
because of the right afterwards.
I love watching that. When you ride the Ariel ride at Disney World at the Magic Kingdom, like he's right there on the bend. I love checking him out when he's coming through. All right, we got to move this discussion along.
That Ariel ride is the worst ride in Disney World. So there's another hot take for you.
Oh,
there's a lot I would put under
disagree. Disney World, in the whole world.
Yeah,
just worse than
you should have led with that.
All right, we're going to have more discussion about that off camera. But after the success of Little Mermaid, they kind of fast-tracked their next program because usually these Disney movies take about 4 years to make. And Beauty and the Beast, they only did in 2 years. But it was one of the very first Disney films to use a screenwriter as opposed to just storyboard writing out. So that may have helped. Howard Ashman... he was dying of AIDS at the time that this was all happening, and Disney was kind of flying back and forth from New York to LA to accommodate him, and the rest of the team didn't know why they were doing it. Again, I will watch that documentary. But here's a couple of casting what-ifs. As far as the Beast, obviously it was Robbie Benson who ended up providing the voice, but they potentially also looked at Lawrence Fishburne, Val Kilmer, and Mandy Patinkin for the Beast. Mandy could have been like, please come down to dinner.
She doesn't eat at all.
I would have taken a Lawrence Fishburne Beast. That sounds legit.
Yeah.
You take the Redfield Bell. You stay.
Apparently, they also offered Cogsworth to John Cleese, but he turned it down for a role in 5 Goes West.
Big mistake.
Big mistake. But David Ogden Stiers, love him.
He's great.
Julie Andrews, unsurprisingly, was considered for Mrs. Potts before Angela Lansbury. They gave her the role. And it is, of course, the very first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. There's bigger success. I mean, The Lion King arguably is a bigger success. It made more money financially. Aladdin, of course, with Robin Williams is a big hit. But when I think about these movies, Beauty and the Beast is probably the first one that comes to mind. It's so almost perfect in every single way. The way that the songs line up. I mean, the opening with Belle, that's one of the great openings, I think, of all time in musical theater history, and I'll call it musical theater history because it just explains first of all, the prologue. I mean, the prologue is insanely well written, and again voiced by David Ogden Stiers. In there, I was so honored to when we did it at Portage Northern, when my mom directed it, and Nat, you were LeFou in Beauty and the Beast at Portage Northern High School as a spry little freshman. I got to do the voiceover for the prologue, and I was so excited about that. Jen, what was your relationship with Beauty and the Beast growing up and now today?
What's funny when I think about this is that I don't know if they still do this, but they used to sell the soundtrack before they put the movie out. So you could buy the soundtrack, one of these Disney movies, before you even saw the movie. So based on my love of Little Mermaid, I went out and bought the soundtrack to Beauty and the Beast. And I remember seeing this movie, strangely enough, with my relatives in Iowa. I was on a trip to visit family. And I was that obnoxious kid in the theater singing every word to every song to a movie that no one had ever seen before. I love the music in this movie. I mean, talk about a perfect score, like from start to finish, all the music, all the songs, just there. I don't think there's a clunker in the movie. So it's just one that, was made to be a stage show and, obviously transitioned beautifully into that. We'll get to that later, I'm sure, but it's just a wonderful movie. It's beautiful.
Nat, what's your favorite part about Beauty and the Beast?
My favorite part about Beauty and the Beast is the pure imagination of it. The pure imagination of these inanimate objects that now have more personality than other real characters in other Disney movies. You know what I mean? Because it made it accessible around my house too. Now all of a sudden the sofa was more than just a sofa. Now all of a sudden the candle was more than just a candle. And for a kid, that's a dream.
Except your ass-in friend is on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. I just like sitting on my friends, apparently. But no, it's the same thing. Also, Belle, I'm pretty sure was my first crush ever, which I know that there's controversy about, can you have a crush on an animated character? And of course
you can. We'll get to Jasmine in a second.
But I was just like, this is amazing. The animation is beautiful. Not to mention, it was the first Disney movie, or really the first Disney movie of its time to incorporate different types of computer-generated animation instead of just the hand-drawn 2D animation. And I thought that, and it was noticeable to me. And I remember, I'm sure we can all talk about it, but I remember the chandelier shot, seeing it for the first time and getting chills, actually getting chills. Cause it was just this feels like a genuine movie. This feels like just a movie that's no longer an animated film. You know what I mean?
They re-released it in IMAX about around the year 2000, and I saw it there. That's when they restored human again into it.
Right.
And seeing it on IMAX was mind-blowing, because I saw it, obviously when I was 10 years old, and then seeing it as a college-age student, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Yeah. But Adam, did you have the Beauty and the Beast CD as well?
Yes, absolutely. Of course. And that was at that time, I was 13, right? And I remember when it got nominated for Best Picture and just so rooting for it. Yeah. It's gotta win. I want it to win so bad. It's for our generation, for the kids,
Yeah.
I still consider it really the only, even though Toy Story 3, I want to say, and Up have since been nominated for Best Picture, since they've expanded the list. I mean, for the fact that it was there and it lost to Silence of the Lambs, you can't really get more two different movies.
When I was 13, I thought that was the biggest robbery of all time. And then I saw Silence of the Lambs, of course.
It wouldn't be the first time people are upset that Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar.
Too soon, man. Too soon. But that ending is so emotionally affecting as well, when not just the Beast transformation, and I really want to credit Robbie Benson's voice acting there, because when all those characters pop up into their human forms, and he's like, Cogsworth, Mrs. Pot, it's like this release that's happening, and the release that happens over the castle and everything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is some of the best final 10 minutes. If you want to talk about the first 10 minutes of Little Mermaid, I think the final 10 minutes of Beauty and the Beast, from the Gaston and him fighting on the roof to the end, is pretty insanely entertaining.
It is, and it's intense too. I mean, it was the same thing with Little Mermaid as well. But also something that I love about Beauty and the Beast is that the villain aspect of it brought a lot of comedy as well. Ursula had a lot of humor laced within what it was, but it wasn't straight out funny. But now you have Gaston with LeFou, and that comedic duo was totally different. I mean, it made you, in a way, kind of endear yourself to, at least on the LeFou side a little bit, to them but then at the same time, it
Well, and then when he
realized just how evil he is.
Yeah, when he flips on a dime there in the rain and all this stuff, he's like, do you really think that she can love you, beast, and all that stuff.
It's great. It's great. A great vocal performance.
Is anyone have any controversial hot takes about Beauty and the Beast?
Man,
Adam,
look. Prince Adam, whatever, the prince should be thanking his, I don't know why I said that. The prince should be thanking his lucky stars that all his servants didn't immediately murder him when he turned back into a human. Okay, because what did they have to do to get turned into to a chair and a toilet or whatever? Who was the toilet?
That's what I'm saying, man. Who was the toilet?
And what was that like?
And all these versions of Beauty and the Beast that have come, after this that hasn't been addressed. But here's a question: Do those enchanted objects experience time? Because Chip was a 7-year-old.
Yeah. What's up with that?
And now is he still a 7-year-old?
I have a lot of questions about the enchanted objects in general.
Yeah, I don't think what I would gathered.
They have a huge library. Mrs. Potts needs to hand Chip some books and say, learn to read, man.
Yeah. What I was gathered is that they didn't age. They experienced time, but they never aged at all. They were stuck at the age that they were, which is kind of crazy. But then that's not the same with the Beast. Because when the Beast was turned into the Beast, he was still
he was like a teenager.
Yeah. Exactly. So he totally aged.
And where's his parents, by the way?
It's a Disney movie. They're dead.
That's true. There you go. Yeah. All right, we're going to have to keep moving. Again, we can talk about this forever. So we got to keep this. Yes, one thing, Matt.
Just the hot take that they straight up murder people in Beauty and the Beast. And it's not addressed. Yes. Like the big final battle, like it's supposed to be like funny and oh my gosh, look at that. No, they straight up murder.
Yeah, that Madame Grand LaBouche lands right on that dude.
Sure does. Sure does.
And if I was Gaston, I would say, Belle, I know you're the pinnacle, but you said no. I'll go to the three.
Three girls right over there.
Although, what a great example of the ego of man. There's no villain more human, I think, than Gaston, because it really does exhibit the worst parts of man.
Well, after Beauty and the Beast, the following year, opening on November 25th, 1992, came the movie Aladdin. And I guess Jeffrey Katzenberg was happy that there was a boy at front and center for this one as opposed to a girl. I don't know. A Whole New World was the only Disney song ever to win the Grammy for Song of the Year. Yeah. And there was this big pitch by Howard Ashman with the script, and it had all these additions that aren't in the movie, like Aladdin's mom, his friends, Abu and Iago were changed to animals. But here's one good thing Katzenberg did. He thought that script didn't engage, and on a day known around the Disney studios as Black Friday, he demanded the whole story be rewritten and did not change the release date of the film. Aladdin's mom and friends were all gone, and that's where we have all these tremendous trunk songs that they brought back some of them for the stage show. Obviously, the other big thing about Aladdin is Robin Williams, R.I.P. And the fact that for an animated movie, they handed him a script or handed him just like things to riff on, and he would often ad-lib during it, and then the animators would take that and go to work on what he did there and use his best moments. They said he created like 25 different characters in one recording session. Others that were considered for the Genie included John Candy, Steve Martin, and Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that this might be the funniest Disney animated film of all time. Adam, your thoughts on Aladdin initially?
It's okay. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of following a follow-up after Beauty and the Beast. It's like, what can you do? And they did a nice job, but in the end, I was always kind of like upset at the meta-ness of it because of, I don't know, I like Robin Williams and I love that song, Friend Like Me, but I always got kind of cringy when he brought out like he wears the goofy hat and he does the airplane bit and everything, where it takes you kind of out of the story and takes you kind of out of the movie. That said, look, music's still great, and there's still some great animation. The Cave of Wonders sequence is fantastic, and Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater with our 1-year-old cousin Alex, and he liking it too. So yeah.
Nat?
Aladdin for me was culturally important. You know, it was the first time that Disney was telling a story from the point of view of protagonist of someone from a different country and clearly a different race and culture and whatnot. But even from seeing the poster that was just up there, this movie is not even about Aladdin.
No,
it's the genie's
Genie.
film. It is the genie's film. And I think that's just, I think a lot of people, that is the main takeaway. In fact, I would have to say musically, I believe Aladdin is the weakest of the Renaissance films, and particularly quite a lot of Disney actually following that. I think Aladdin has, for me, Aladdin is A Whole New World and Friend Like Me, and that's it. I don't even think Prince Ali is all that great. I don't even think Arabian Nights is all that great. And then, like, that's it. You don't even get anything at the end. That's like,
that song is not in the movie, right? Proud of Your Boy, right?
Yeah, Proud of Your Boy never made it in, which is a good one. But then also for me, like, it was the most inappropriate in so many ways. Like Jafar praying on Jasmine, the way he does at the end. I remember still as a kid being like,
this is inappropriate.
This is like, what is he gonna do? And then that, of course, makes you ask a lot of questions that your parents do not want to address. And that was something that Aladdin, like, kind of always stuck with me in that way. The snake finale, though, is absolutely fantastic. I think it's one of the greatest, like, final.
I don't know. I prefer a huge flying bird.
Please don't ever say that again.
Jen, what about you?
I like Aladdin. You know, they kind of did Robin Williams dirty in this movie, though. Like, he agreed to do it based on, like, okay, I'll do this movie, but please don't merchandise the hell out of my character. Right. And then they turned around and merchandised the hell out of his character, which was really not cool. And he, you know, for years after that, like, refused to even acknowledge them. It's a cool movie. I mean, I love, you know, like I love reprises. So, like, all the reprises in all of these movies to me are probably my favorite song. So, like, that little one jump reprise that he does when he's looking over Agrabah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Probably the best villain reprise too.
Yeah.
Jafar's Prince Ali at the end. I was like, yeah, I hate this guy. He's the worst.
Yeah, he's the worst, and also super dope. So
say what you will, but between Robin Williams, Jonathan Freeman as Jafar, and Gilbert Gottfried as Iago, those are some of the best voice work stuff that
Iago is really funny. Watch that movie again. Gilbert Gottfried's amazing in that movie.
He is, but also, like, it's not like Gilbert Gottfried was, like, doing anything other than just speaking like Gilbert Gottfried. Like,
come on.
The reason Gilbert was cast was not because of his voice acting ability. It was because his voice sounded the way he does.
I think
that's my hot take. Yeah.
Well, my hot take is wish number 2 doesn't make sense to me. Like, Aladdin's drowning. And you made a big deal about, I can't do it unless you say I'm wishing. And he's unconscious, and the genie shakes him to make him nod his head. Is that what we're going with, movie? Okay, you told me these rules were so important, and then you basically just said, screw it, we need to
friendship that the genie has with him.
Yeah.
Hey, before Aladdin frees the genie, shouldn't he just like, hey, Jasmine, why don't you take the lamp for a second? Or like hey,
she's
Jasmine,
a woman, Rob. She's a woman.
she doesn't have autonomy over the lamp because of that. Oh boy.
Also, I think Aladdin really got off scot-free. Like, Jean Valjean spent 2 decades in prison for the same crime, man. And Aladdin just gets away with it. There's also something about that always bothered me too. It was like, but he never really suffers the consequences of, it's the Dear Evan Hansen syndrome. He never really suffers the consequences of literally just lying to everybody. And it still just works out for him.
I haven't seen the live action remake. I don't know how much we're going to get to touch on it, but it tries to improve of that a little bit with Jasmine and all that.
Yes, they do. They do. That's one thing that these Broadway shows and then these live action remakes have the ability to do is to strengthen the character background. And they definitely strengthen Jasmine's as well.
Yeah.
We're going to move right on to The Lion King so we can get to the stage versions. It's just some history on the making of. Lion King and Pocahontas were being made at the same time, and all like the great Disney animators flocked to Pocahontas because they thought that one was the more prestigious project, and that was going to win Disney the Academy Awards and stuff like that. And Lion King was just like, yeah, go over there, blah blah blah. And like, who's going to watch a film where a lion cub gets framed for murder by his uncle set to the music of Elton John? Well, apparently it became the highest grossing animated film of all time, the best-selling VHS of all time. Yeah. And when we talk about the stage version, it's the highest grossing entertainment property in the history of the world.
Right.
So even though I like Pocahontas for some aspects of it, yeah, Lion King is pretty much an unstoppable force, like a stampede of wildebeests down a ravine. So when we talk about some of the great parts in it, mine initially goes to that stampede, and not just the animation, which is great. The music for me, the music and the sound of that stampede is what I like. The Elton John songs fine, but to me, the score and the stuff that Hans Zimmer and like Lebo M brought to it,
yep.
Was really incredible.
Yep. Even Hans Zimmer was writing the Pirates of the Caribbean score 10 years before Pirates of the Caribbean came out in the Stampede. And I think he gets forgotten so much because you think that Elton John just did all of it if you're not really informed and whatnot, but he really was responsible. Like my favorite part of the movie, if we're going right there, is the King of Pride Rock right at the very end. Just because there's no dialogue, there's no anything. It is simply animation put to music, and the music is
It's amazing.
It's unreal. It's so good. And when it finally transitions into the like that, I go nuts. And they start roaring. It's like the only time in the movie that they just be animals for a second. You know what I mean? Like, even when they roar earlier, they're still talking and everything in between. But like, this is just them roaring into the rain with this music happening. It's unreal. The drums and percussion use in this movie. I think Lion King is the greatest 2D animated film of all time. It's my favorite 2D animated film of all time, and I believe it is the greatest 2D animated film, hand-drawn film of all time.
Well, I won't take that away from you.
Thank
Jen,
you.
Jen, what about your thoughts on The Lion King?
Honestly, I felt a little old for this movie when it came out. I was already in high school when this movie came out, and I went and saw it, and I liked it, but, I was almost too cool for it by that point, or thought I was. Grown-up me can really appreciate, like, the artistry, and you're hit the nail on the head. The music in this movie, the score particularly. I don't really care so much for some of the Elton John songs. They're whatever to me. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? It's not my fave. But the score is so good.
Yes.
And
yes.
The way they transitioned that score into actual songs once the Broadway musical came around, and those songs are so much better than the Elton John songs that were originally in the movie, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, let's just transition over to these shows and their adaptations on Broadway, because we've only got about 15 minutes left here, because we have, thank you, Kathleen, expounded so much of our knowledge that we have curated over these years of our life.
We don't have a lot to do,
but let's talk about that Lion King musical, because that really, of all these musicals, you can take the Lion King movie stand alone, but this musical is its own beast in itself. It's the same. They're similar enough, of course, but what Julie Taymor, of course, the great director, brought with her vision, with the costumes. I mean, there is something about seeing that on stage that no matter what you think about the cartoon version, it is a moving experience. And the fact that those great songs, like you mentioned, the songs that they added, like He Lives in You, and Shadowlands and the choral stuff and One by One. And again, yes, trash all the new Elton John songs that he wrote for like the Hyenas and Zazu and blah, blah, blah. Those are all crap. But Adam and I had, and my dad was over here this afternoon. I was talking to him. Adam and I saw The Lion King the month that it opened. I'm not even sure if it was officially
a
open
preview.
yet.
Or it was like the second night after there. It was like one of the first week it was open, I think.
And I don't know if it was Catherine Adams may have helped because Cynthia Courtman, her friend, was the associate conductor in the pit. After the show, we got to tour backstage and see all the props and costumes and how amazing it all was. And when those elephants come down the aisle, I mean, there were tears streaming down audience members faces. Did you guys see it when it came through Miller a few years ago and they had to take out some of the
that was the first time I'd ever seen it. I didn't when it was on Broadway. Ragtime was the first Broadway musical I ever saw, and I was such a huge Ragtime fan. I just was really salty in my ways about I'm not seeing The Lion King, and I was so mad about it winning the Tony because Ragtime won Best Book. So I never saw it for all those years, just I guess on principle or something, but it's an amazing show. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Adam, you were in New York that summer, weren't you?
Yeah, I actually got to go to the Tony party with Catherine at the whatever the theater that Lion King was in and watch them as they won, because of course the cast, they went and performed at the Tonys and they came back to the theater. And then nobody thought they were going to win. Everybody thought Ragtime was going to win, right?
Yeah.
And then when they won,
is that what it's called? The theater, the
yeah. And it was like party time at that theater that night. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was nominated for 11 Tonys. It won 6, including Best Musical. Julie Taymor was the first woman to win the Tony for Best Direction.
Yeah.
And the worldwide gross exceeds that of any entertainment title in box office history.
And
I'm sorry. Lion King was my first Broadway musical that I ever saw.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, really? I actually lost to Broadway battles about this once. Thanks, Adam. But it was the first show I ever saw. I'm not kidding. There has never been a piece of art that has made me cry faster than The Lion King on stage. And I'll stand by, I think it is also the best first 5 minutes and the best opening sequence of a show of all time. I think it's unbelievably powerful, especially given that everyone has the context already of the film and you're thinking to yourself, how are they going to do this? And then they do what they do. And you're thinking to yourself, oh okay. That's how they're going to do it.
I mean,
there's a rhino next to me in the aisle. What the is going on? This, it was incredible. I remember as an 8-year-old kid in the front, in the third row, just going absolutely nuts for it. It changed my life.
Well, especially coming off Beauty and the Beast on Broadway, when
that was
that was and how they sort of transitioned those characters. Like, how are you going to put 12-inch high candelabra? Well, they're human size, but they've got the real things here. And I thought they did a good job with how they sort of transitioned the inanimate objects. The way they sort of reworked the story a little, so sort of they were changing over time fully into that inanimate object, which sort of raised the stakes there. And Beauty and the Beast on Broadway was nominated for 9 Tonys. It only won 1 for Best Costumes. It lost to Passion for Best Musical. I can't really speak about Passion since I've never seen it or heard it, but the fact that I've never seen it or heard it will tell you all you maybe need to know about it. I like that they expanded on the Beast's character, the whole learning to read section. And I mean, talk about the bangers from the movie. I think that the songs that Alan Menken wrote for the stage version are equally as non-skippable. You've got songs like If I Can't Love Her, Home, of course. Even like Gaston's song, Me. That's a great comedic song for him.
Fantastic.
Maison de Lune is a great song, I think. Really creepy. Human Again, which they wrote for the movie, but they put in, was sort of like the second act sort of chorus number there. and the way that all the technical stuff, from the transformation, the flying and stuff they did with the wolves. I mean, some really impressive technical work in that as well.
Absolutely.
As much as I love those first 10 minutes of Lion King on stage, if you gave me a choice between which stage version I would see, it'd probably be Beauty and the Beast. Just pound for pound, and just for everything what you said, Rob, and just my preference. But we saw Beauty and the Beast on Broadway as well. That was like my second Broadway show I ever saw.
We did a New York trip in that,
when I was in high school. I felt betrayed by Lion King when it came out. Like, Elton John, where's Alan Menken? Yeah, I know Howard Ashman is terrible. Well, where's Alan Menken?
Yeah,
I love both. I like both. But
Jen, have you ever been in Beauty and the Beast the musical or any?
This is my one that got away. I just turned on for the 20th time, so I think maybe my ship has sailed at this point. This was one I always wanted to do, and nobody did it ever at the right time, for me personally. But I love this show. If anyone ever decides to do a version with older people, please call me.
Jen, in 20 more years, you're going to play Mrs. Potts in every production.
That's fine. I'll take that. That's fine.
All right.
The only thing about this entire show that bothers me is the fact that the inanimate objects are so big. You get into it and it's fine, but like something about them being so big next to everyone else it throws me off. But I love the music so much.
I totally agree, actually. It makes me focus too much. Here's the thing, is when the entire plot of the show is about them not being humans specifically, and then they're played by humans in which you have to connect to their human expressions and acting emotions. That for me is also like it's great to see on stage, I agree, but I think it's one of the situations where the movie is far, far superior.
I'm just not here for the complete erasure of Philippe. So
Philippe.
Poor Philippe.
Dude, Philippe was a badass in that movie. He was scared, but he was brave at the same time.
That's right.
I understand why they had to do it. War Horse hadn't come out yet, so they didn't really have that imagination.
Got Sven on Frozen, right? So they kind of
they figured it out with Sven.
Yeah.
After the success of both these musicals, you'd think every Disney musical since then would have been a surefire hit as well. But that was not the case when The Little Mermaid opened on Broadway in November of 2007. Apparently, they hired Matthew Bourne, who was the choreographer, Tony winner for Mary Poppins, but then he left due to problems with the vision. They just said, we haven't found a way to do the water. And then they said, we're not going to do any water, no wires, no flying. I know, we'll put all the actors on Heelys. The sneakers with the wheels on the back. They called them merblades. And her tail there used to have a big mechanical thing in it, but it was cut because it was too loud and distracting. Because you think a cast that has Sierra Bogus, Sherry Renee Scott, Norm Lewis, Titus Burgess as Sebastian can't miss, but no, it was mixed critical reception, only received 2 Tony nominations. And for me, the new songs are hit and miss, and they're mostly misses for me. Anyone want to know about anyone wants, not Heelys, yes, that's right. Oh, I just imagine Ariel going right off into the orchestra pit there if necessary.
I remember, I was a nanny for a number of years, as you may or may not know, and I remember listening to the soundtrack, somebody burned it for me, and listening to it in the car, and it was the number where Ariel is like mute, but she's going through town and pointing out everything that she sees, because somehow you have to address the fact that your main character can't speak for the entire
beyond
second
my wildest
half
dreams.
of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember the little girl I was nannying, it was in the back seat, and she was like, hey, Jen, I don't understand. She can't talk. Why is she? And she was like 5. So that's not, you don't want your show to be communicating that to your 5-year-old audience, probably. It's just not very good. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, in my opinion.
There's only one good new song, right, Nat?
I've been looking forward to this moment ever since you asked me to do this because I'm aware of all of your opinions on Little Mermaid. I couldn't disagree with you more. I am a huge fan of the Little Mermaid on stage musical, and I am unashamed about that fact. Sure, is it a little dopey on the heelys? Yes. Sure, are the costumes a little distracting because it looks like a tail is like coming out of her back? Sure. But I had the most fun when I saw it as a kid, and to me, that is the whole point, right? Because there's a lot of adults that can go see a Disney musical and pick apart all the things that are wrong with it. And you are correct, you really are. But I remember as a kid hearing about all these reviews from adults being like, these are all the reasons this is a bad musical. And I remember as a kid feeling for the first time, be like, you know what? Maybe this one isn't for you, right? Maybe this one is just for us, for the kids to go in and have a great time. And I simply did do that. And even as an adult, and you're right, I will admit, you're all right about the flaws. But I still think it is so much fun. I love all of the new songs that were added. I love every single one.
Even Positively or whatever that.
Positivity as the tap number? Yes. Tap dancing seagulls? Sign me up. I'm so there for it. Little Flounder singing She's in Love with all the sisters. Give it to me.
That's a good one. That's a good one too.
All day long. The If Only Quartet.
The If Only Quartet is a banger, sure.
Come on, and let's be honest.
I think that's convincing you, Rob.
Yes, and Titus, what Titus did with Sebastian is unlike anything that could have happened with that character. You know what I mean?
I just never understood, like, how are they going to make a crab who is a crab and is a crab? He's like the 6 foot tall guy now.
There are crabs that big.
Here's how you do it. You get someone with an ungodly good voice so that nobody cares anymore. Because guess what? I did not care anymore. He goes up that octave in the final key change to E flat in Under the Sea, and I just poop everywhere. It's so good.
Nat, what I hear you saying is if they cast Titus Burgess as all of the inanimate objects in Beauty and the Beast, then they would win you over.
100%. Give me a green screened edited version of Titus Burgess playing every character.
I take him as the genie too.
I would also take him as the genie.
Oh,
we'll get there.
Good segue, because the last movie to come out, turn into a musical on Broadway that we'll speak of today is Aladdin, which is
the only one other than Lion King that's going to reopen, right?
Yes, yeah, that's still playing. I believe it's coming back September 28th, and was able to bring back a lot of those elements that were cut during that Black Friday that I spoke of earlier. So a lot of songs that were written previously were brought back, like Proud of Your Boy. Aladdin's buddies are brought back. There's no Abu in the stage version. I saw this on Broadway, and it was a spectacle. I could not get emotionally invested in Aladdin, and maybe that's just Aladdin for Aladdin's sake. But the Friend Like Me number is pretty insane. I mean, they saw Be Our Guest in the Beauty and the Beast stage version and said, well, let's try to do even more. And I think they did, because it ends Act 1, and it's pretty insanely incredible. And James Monroe Iglehart, who won the Tony Award for the Genie, say what you will about even Robin Williams, and like, you can't replace him. I think that both James Monroe Iglehart and, if we go on to Will Smith in the live action version, each have their own performances about it, and I'm not mad at any of them for that. And my favorite moment, and I still am not completely sure how they did it, is the flying carpet during A Whole New World. And, it looks great when it's on, when that number's happening. But it's just a little emotionally empty for me. But still,
my favorite thing about having a stage show of Aladdin is that we can see all of these high schools or other theaters doing it and failing at the magic carpet scene when the carpet breaks. So that's brought me a lot of joy.
Well, I have seen some magic carpet fails on YouTube, and it seemed pretty scary at some points.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know if we want to trust the 15-year-old stage crew who's like just working on this to get a credit. Has anyone else seen the Aladdin stage show?
Yes, I saw it on Broadway. I've been lucky enough to work with both James and Adam Jacobs, and
Awesome.
Adam has become a buddy of mine. And the passion, from what I understand from him, the best thing about the show is the passion of everybody that was involved in the cast. Is that everybody gives 150% every single night, because obviously they have to do some making up for the fact that they can't have all of the magic sort of spectacle that you would find in Aladdin. I'm of the opinion that Aladdin is the weakest of all of the Disney musicals that have been brought to stage. That's not to say that there aren't still enjoyable things, but
Tarzan, dude, Tarzan.
Man, I'll take Phil Collins over anyone any
Really?
day. Yeah, I will. You're right. It's not that great, but still, I will take those songs at the least. Yeah, it didn't really work for me. In fact, I don't even remember it all that much, which for me personally is a sign that there was not much going on, at least for me. But the fact that they try so hard, like the fact that James does what he does, I think you're right, Robbie. It's mad respect. It really is.
I mean, he gets a standing ovation or applause break in the middle of that song every time, just because that he is working. The sweat. We saw, we were with a big school group that Whitney had back in 2014 or 15 or something like that. We were way in the back, and you could certainly still tell how hard that they all were working.
Exactly.
For sure. This conversation, guys, has been so great, and we still have so much we could talk about. So I maybe have to bring you in for, Disney Renaissance Part 2, where we can talk about Pocahontas and Mulan and Hercules and Hunchback, my favorite 2D movie. I think it's the greatest 2D animated movie of all time. But so maybe we'll have to tease that for some time in the future. But I want to thank my guests for joining me tonight. And I want to thank all of you out there on the internet for joining us as well. All of us here at Farmers Alley Theater are so looking forward to connecting with you and with all the news that's happening. We think that day is coming closer now than ever before. We still have some really exciting outdoor theater activities coming up this summer. So feel free to check out our website at farmersalleytheater.com for all the information on that. Coming up next on Farmers Alley Theater Online, we're very excited because we're bringing our good friend DJ Bucciarelli in to host a special Farmers Alley Theater game night, sort of a bingo mega mix. That's going to be 2 weekends from now. We're not sure if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday night, but we'll get that information to you. And it's just going to be a real party atmosphere. It's going to be on Zoom. He's got this great lineup of games that he plays. He's been doing this all year, all pandemic long, for theaters all across the country. DJ Bucciarelli, you know him from Carol's Kings and It Should Have Been You and The Secret Garden for us. And so he's excited to come back and lead that with us. And then this summer, we're going to be opening up a children's musical based on the book She Persisted. That's right, She Persisted, the musical, is coming to Bronson Park and the Celery Flats Amphitheater on 3 Saturdays in June. Those first 2 dates, June 12th and the 19th, are going to be at Bronson Park. We're going to have 2 shows on each of those days, 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. And then we're going to be on the 26th at the Celery Flats Amphitheater in Portage as well. So please look forward to more information on that. But that's going to be happening this June outdoors. And of course, if you want to bring Farmers Alley Theater to your home, to your backyard, we're bringing back season 2 of Backyard Broadway. Book yours today. Last year, Jeremy Koch and his family went around to about 20 or 30 different homes in the West Michigan area, and we have brought the whole Koch family back together, as well as some wonderful students from Western and some great performers like Whitney Weiner, Estefan Kaiser, Mary Toich, Josh and Allison White, a whole cavalcade. So we have bigger, better. It's a sequel, so it's got to be bigger and better. And Backyard Broadway, you can book that right now if you go to Farmers Alley Theater Online. If you want to bring all those lovely people back to the fold, Jason, I want to thank our producer, Jason Koch, for joining us, for helping us and making this happen tonight. Nat, Jen, Adam, any final words? We'll start with Adam. Any final words to say about this Disney discussion?
They're all fantastic. Shout out to Jason Koch, the best chip I ever saw on Beauty and the Beast.
Hey.
I disagree. I think he's the best Simba I ever saw in The Lion King.
Or the best genie I ever saw in Aladdin.
We should have had Jason in for this conversation.
He was a great Ariel too.
Jen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope this was a nice little respite from, it's not, Epcot Center, but we're thankful you're here.
What is? This was very fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Where's Figment the musical?
Oh, can you imagine? Nat, get on that. You're good at writing stuff. Exactly. Call me.
She loves Figment.
Nat's next project. Here it comes. we're dropping the knowledge right now.
I'm legally obligated to shut my mouth right now.
All right.
Oh.
Interesting. Well, Nat.
My hot takes. Thanks. I love it. Thanks for having me. Love Farmer's Alley. Love you guys so much. James Earl Jones as Mufasa is the best vocal performance of all time. Good night, everyone.
Well, on that note, everything the light touches belongs to you, or something.
Simba.
No, it's all about the. You deliberately disobeyed me.
It was worse. You put Nala in danger.
All right.
No, hot take. Best performance ever. Jonathan Taylor Thomas as young Simba.
Oh, no.
Inappropriate. So was Matthew Broderick. Shouldn't have been in it.
Oh, the whitest people possible? Yes, that's correct. Again, thank you all there for joining us, and we will see you at the theater soon. Much love. Thank you. Bye-bye.